Medvis Jackson from the Detroit Global Shapers Hub. I'll be bringing to you a series of interviews and conversations with Detroiters. You'll catch us out on the street, just getting very candid responses and points of views from different Detroiters. As you know, we have an election coming up this November. And so we want to understand the perspectives on voting that Detroiters hold and why they may or may not vote. And so today I have with us a very special guest who I met a couple years ago working on a Wayne County commissioner campaign, Ms. Bianca Garcia. And we just coordinated via text message and Instagram, and so I decided to reach back out to her and see if she would discuss her experiences as a community organizer, as a Detroiter, and as someone who's worked on campaigns and talked with voters in the past. So Bianca, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I am well, I'm so excited to go outside and enjoy some of the sunlight. But thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's actually finally nice. The weather's been very weird. So as you said, we met when I was the campaign manager for Gabriela Santiago Romero. Her race was last year, which unfortunately we did lose. And other than that, I've been involved in stuff in the community for a couple of years. Since youth, I've always done working on political campaigns, helping with community organizing. There are photos of me from when I was like 8 or 9, protesting trucks in the neighborhood in Southwest Detroit, protesting Matty Maroon. I've worked on Rashida Tlaib's campaign, Raquel Castaneda Lopez's campaign, Obama's 2012 campaign. And currently I am the director of outreach programming and the program manager at La Casa Guadalupana. We're an adult education center here in Southwest Detroit, so we help adults get their GED and ESL classes. We deal with a lot of students that have DACA statuses. We also function as a community center, so we do a lot of outreach work, help people get connected to resources for health, housing, childcare, things like that. But aside from my professional work in that capacity, I do a lot of community organizing around racial justice, around the Latinx community, and around just like economic stability, period, just mutual aid. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, you've been really helpful as someone who follows you on Instagram, help me educate myself about different issues and see the world through a different lens. So I've already appreciated you as a rising community leader here in Detroit. So as someone who's been helping folks better themselves through education and receive certification, the GED certification, do you feel that like your work is affected by the decisions made in City Hall? Do you feel like the people that you serve are being affected by the decisions made in City Hall and at the city council level? And if you do, would you mind explaining some of those ways that people are affected?
Yeah, I think to a point. So luckily, the money that we receive to operate, none of it is associated with the city, although I feel that it should be. I think, we have a really big issue with high school graduation, high school dropout. In my program specifically, we offer the GED in Spanish speakers, and a lot of people that are trying to get their DACA status. I have a lot of students who are older than I am and have lived here longer than I've been alive and never got their high school diploma because they were too afraid to go to school because of ICE, because they were undocumented, and many of them still are undocumented. So, that specific issue is something that the city has really been very hands-off about. ICE and Customs and Border Patrol misusing their power in our neighborhoods. We're considered like I think it's called an ICE border zone. So because of that, ICE has free reign on within, I think, 100 miles or 50 miles of the border to kind of just not pay attention to the Fourth Amendment and do stops and seizures on whoever they'd like for whatever reason they believe, because it's like a border that they have to protect, but it's not people coming from the Canadian border, obviously.
Yeah. They're worried about the one that's like 2,000 miles away, right?
Yeah, they're worried about the wrong border, and it's just ridiculous. The city has been very silent on us actually becoming a real sanctuary city. DPSCD recently became a sanctuary district, but then we're this city full of all these charter schools. And the charter schools don't have to fall under the same rules of DPSCD because they all individually operate, most of them pretty much as their own district, and most of them have their own boards just for that individual school. So the city, you know, it's like when you ask me that question directly, it's hard to be like, oh, the city funds us or doesn't fund us or whatever. But then you look at the bigger picture and it's like, so many of our students are in XYZ situation because of inaction or, you know, whatever it is by the city when it comes to so many things. You know, inaction not only to deal with the way that ICE and Customs and Border Patrol are in our cities, but with the way police operate within our cities. We would probably be able to get so many more people their GEDs or just encourage people to graduate high school if we didn't have such a large police budget. Every year when city budgets come out, I've seen this discourse recently that's like cities are just police departments with a couple of things on the side, which they really are. You know, there's graphs made up of like all the cities in the Rust Belt of what their budgets look like, and police is like this. And, you know, our city council people are voting on this, but we don't know that. And so that's why I do take to Instagram to do what I can to try to educate people. And I feel grateful to know that I have helped people find their voting location, encourage people to vote, encourage people to be knowledgeable on certain issues. I think social media is a great platform because I can still be personable. I don't have to be super professional all the time. I can be like your neighbor or your peer, or your coworker, or whatever you see me as, and communicate those things to people. But yeah, I think the city, within the work that I do, whether it be my professional job or whether it be community organizing that we have to do around, you know, mutual aid, around racially motivated redlining, around police brutality. I marched around 100 days last summer with BLM protesters, you know, and I watched the police brutalize people. So within all of the work I do in the community, paid and unpaid, I see what the mayor and what the city could be doing for us, and the inaction that they're taking. You know, Mayor Duggan was very silent last year, and there were even council people that commended the police for what they did. I watched the police lie directly to the media and say that in one of the instances where they attempted to run protesters over with their car that we had hammers. I didn't have a hammer, and neither did any of the people around me. Nobody had a hammer. Nobody was knocking out the windows of the cop cars. And then in response to people, I mean, there were people who marched even more than 100 days, but in response to people marching for days on end and getting continuously brutalized by police, Mayor Duggan just announced that he has a plan to put more police into our neighborhoods and allow them to continue brutalizing people, despite the fact that the event that set that off, which was in Greektown about a week or two ago, people were basically just brawling in the streets. Because it's the end of a pandemic, people are drunk. If you're really trying to use police tactics to calm people down, you would tase them and detain them. But the police were doing hand-to-hand like street fighter combat with people in the streets. And then our mayor, who's supposed to be representing us, said, yeah, so we're just going to put like even way more millions of dollars into police for safety. So in all the work I do, no matter what it is, yeah, I see the impact of municipal politics and government and how they're just not doing what I believe is their job.
In talking about, you know, that insistence on solving social problems through the police force. So I've been reading this book called Groundings with My Brothers by a political theorist who was popular in the 60s and 70s. He was assassinated in 1980, named Walter Rodney. And he talked about the fact that it's really important that we go to the working classes in our cities and our countries and find out what they're thinking and learn what they're doing and find ways that we, many times, you know, middle class intellectuals or bourgeois intellectuals, we can learn how we can best serve these working classes. When you work with your students, what are some of the concerns that you hear them saying? Many times they may not be using all of the mainstream Twitter discourse language that's so popular. They speak, you know, in very different terms, and they have different concerns than what you and I may have as e-traders. What are some of the issues that they really talk about often?
Most definitely, yeah. So I that's a great point that you brought up. I will say it's sometimes very difficult speaking with those I serve about police and police brutality and police violence, because no matter what a lot of people's backgrounds are, they all have, you know, a lot of my students have come to this consensus that we do need police, and it's because they don't understand what else would we have, what else could we do, what else would we have to do to have safety. And it's this, they're at this intersection where, like, depending on what's going on, a lot of them do feel unsafe in their neighborhood for whatever reason it is, whether it be, you know, it's usually when you look at the root cause of whatever they tell me they feel unsafe about, it's economic disparity and racism is normally 99.9% of the time the root of whatever problem they have. You know, most of my students will say, oh, we have a problem with these neighborhood drug addicts, or these people that are stealing things, or guns, or squatters, or you know, things of that nature, that are all just can be traced back to white flight and our government just not doing enough for making sure that people have universal basic income, or you know, that people are set. But when I try to explain to my students that it's an economic disparity or it's a racist circumstance, and like the police aren't going to just come in and change that, you know, a lot of people are like, yeah, well, I don't know what, at least I feel safe when I call them, or at least they're going to arrest so-and-so that's like doing crack on the corner. And it's like, it sometimes gets very frustrating.
Yeah.
Try to explain to the populations that I work with and serve that that's not what we want. You know, I've tried to say, like, okay, whatever it is happened, you know, like, okay, this person did drugs and then crashed their car on your street. That was a big problem that happened to somebody that I knew. And you called the police, and what happened? And they're like, yeah, well, they talked to them and they didn't really do anything. And now they're back out, like living a block away from me again. And they're still like doing drugs. And I was like, yeah, so do you understand how the police didn't help the situation? Like, yeah. Whatever. And they're like, yeah, but at least I could call him if he does it again. I was like, oh, like, I just wish the outreach that a lot of political campaigns do, I wish there was some type of way or some type of funding where people could really dive deep and dig into the issues with populations and with communities and make it attractive and like worthwhile to do so. That's something that I found very hard in my campaign when I was working with Gabby, especially, but also just other political campaigns that I've worked on, that like, especially issues that are seen to be more like have socialist solutions or radical solutions that are actually not that radical. It's really hard to get people to listen in. And then there's a disconnect where the only way that those types of candidates seem to be able to run in this city, at least within the last 10 years, is a DSA affiliation. But a lot of times a DSA affiliation will scare people away because they hear the word socialist and they're like, oh my God, this person's gonna like turn my city into Russia or China or something. Like, I can't vote for these people. Yeah. So there's definitely like a discrimination and a disparity when it comes to engaging people on more than just, oh, this person's liberal, because that's how it seemed, especially after Obama won. It's like, oh, they're like Obama aligned, kind of. They're like they're like liberal, but a little more liberal, and they'll do whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, like we need to get to a better point. And a lot of times, whenever there's an issue, there's just buzzwords, like you said, like on Twitter or whatever. And even within other communities, within other spaces, they have their own buzzwords and their own way of talking about things as well. And even if some politician is nuts and crazy and terrible, if they have an opinion that's aligned with people on one issue, they'll vote for them.
Yeah. I often feel that, you know, convention's really hard to break away from. And so even if we know, like, take if you got like corporal punishment or spanking or whipping, whatever you want to call it, as a child, it's really hard to break away from that means of discipline. Even if when you think about it, you didn't really like to be disciplined that way, you thought the way you were spanked or whipped was excessive, it's still what people default to once they have kids, because that's the best way they know how to basically maintain control over their house situation and the behavior of their children. So it's really hard for them to kind of envision how they could get their child to behave in a thoughtful, mature, age-appropriate manner without having to use physical force. When you've done campaign work in the past, were there any lessons that you learned in how to engage people on topics? I mean, I've canvassed before. Door knocking in Detroit can be very difficult.
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons you learned in how to engage Detroiters to open up about the things that they think about and the things that could get them to come out to the polls?
So I think that is like, it was something that it's so hard to really do. Detroit is so big and so expansive, and there are so, like, walking the neighborhoods here it's very different than if you were to be, in, I don't know, New York or something. Like, your district it's much smaller with square mileage.
Mm-hmm.
You can hit a lot more doors with a lot less people and get a lot more done. Here in Detroit, it's like a lot of people you'll go 10 houses and like there'll either be nobody living there, or nobody's registered, or the registration's old. Also because of the way that the city has overtaxed people and turned a city of homeowners and a city of many Black homeowners into a city of renters, there's a lot of transient stuff. So there's people that, like, they don't live in the same neighborhood for very long. They don't live in the same house for very long. They don't even know where they're registered to vote. But what I learned from door knocking is, if I could, I would want to have like a real quality conversation with everybody. 100% wholeheartedly, genuinely wish that I could do that. The thing about it is, when I was on one of Rashida's state Senate campaigns, is that we don't have time, especially with the candidate. She would have 15-minute conversations with people, which were great. But, she only really got to dig inside this individual person's mind. And then we couldn't knock as many doors because she would want to have long conversations with people.
Yeah.
But then it's hard because, like, if we called some type of a town hall or a community meeting or something, it's like only people that have this type of sense of engagement or feeling of belonging or responsibility are going to show up. Yeah. The people that we were meeting at the doors don't always show up to those things. Even if we provide, with Gabby, we did free food, we did music, we did all these different types of things. We joined with an event where they were doing like free exercise and stuff. And people came out, but it was nowhere near the amount of people that we saw when we were knocking doors.
Yeah.
I think voter engagement is really hard, not only because, people have super strained schedules. Everybody in my neighborhood has multiple jobs. Everybody has children, families, economic struggles, legal struggles. It's hard to find time to do these things. But then, it's also, you don't feel invited in. Even though, the politicians are working for us, you feel a sense of like you don't belong in the meeting, or you don't belong in whatever it is, because there's just some barrier to entry, whether it be that people feel that they don't belong for economic reasons, for where they are at with their education, stuff like that. People start to say, I had someone on a door say, I don't understand like this lingo. I feel like I can't even vote because I don't know what people are talking about. So I don't even know what I'm supposed to have an opinion on. And I had some people that were like, I know I'm paying my taxes for this. I know the way that this works, but there's just so little transparency that I don't know especially with county commissioner, I don't know what this person is doing.
Yeah, I don't know what they do. Yeah. With those experiences, for folks who are working on city council campaigns or mayoral campaigns this year, what advice would you have for them based off of your past experience and some of the expertise you developed? What would you advise them to do, or what would you advise them to try to avoid when they engage with people?
I think politicians and politicians, even community organizers, even people that do mutual aid, just out of usually accidentally, can be very condescending. I think people feel babied or made fun of, or kind of like a dunce, just like lowered and put down when politicians or people involved in political things speak to them sometimes. You know, it's kind of like a lot of people in the neighborhoods basically told me more or less they felt like, for lack of a better term, like mansplained or gaslighted, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know exactly how to
Yeah.
what to call that, but you know,
Disingenuous. It feels disingenuous.
yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, just feel, even if the politician themselves knocks on the door, they feel demeaned
Yeah.
by the way they speak to them, by the way they try to speak over them. I would say the biggest thing that you have to do is have engagement and community involvement, be really like real and genuine and out of your heart, and try the best to be like socially and racially and economically and culturally competent. And if you don't want to do that, you shouldn't be in office. I think we are getting to a point in Detroit where more and more people from more and more backgrounds and more walks of life are starting to see the importance of our electoral system. And while it's very broken and very segmented, and Detroit has a decades-long history of corruption and closed doors deals and shady stuff going on, we can maneuver the system to work for us. And more people are starting to understand that. And that's something that I really liked about working on Gabby's campaign, is she was one of the first people that I saw was like one of us and for us, which is not always, there's people that love that facade or love to bask in the glow of that idea or that sentiment, but that's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's marketable. At the end of the day, a political campaign is a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people don't understand all the time. So, you know, you can say marketable stuff, but you may not get elected again. Or maybe you will because you have a ton of money.
Yeah,
but I would say, yeah, my best advice is to like really genuinely, and like not even from some stupid type of, like just from a really like real genuine, like these are my neighbors, this is my community type of angle, want to better things and want to engage people and want to represent true democracy in office, is how you can engage people. It's not easy, but it's a start.
And then lastly, for someone who's like, I'm not voting this year, voting doesn't matter, nothing in the city changes if I vote, my neighborhood was the way it was before, and it's going to be the same way 4 years after this election, what would your appeal be to that person? Would you say, yeah, you're right, don't bother, nothing's going to change? Or do you have different advice for them as to why the election could be a part of the solution that they and their neighborhood needs?
After Gabby's campaign, we unfortunately lost the primary. I ended up working with the ACLU and Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation as a voter outreach fellow. So it was a 501c3. It wasn't anything partisan. I couldn't like campaign. It was more to literally just fight voter suppression and to really get people engaged in voting no matter what it was for. So there was some doors that I knocked and some lit that I dropped, some conversations that I had that at times it got disheartening, and people weren't wrong. You know, there was a point where I was in a neighborhood in Southwest Detroit, kind of like a little bit past like Livernois, Michigan Avenue area, you know, and all of Southwest Detroit and pretty much all the neighborhoods other than like downtown, Corktown, and Midtown have huge issues, New Center, have huge issues with blight and abandoned structures and illegal dumping. And this woman's neighborhood was god awful. It was really bad. There was just like, she, on her side of the block, it was her house and then another really small house on the corner. And all the other houses were like disastrously abandoned. There was trash everywhere. You couldn't even walk on the sidewalk. And I went up to this woman's house. And the funny thing about that is when I am door knocking with people that haven't spent much time in the city, they'll be like, oh, that house is abandoned. I'm like, no, it's not. Someone's living there. Someone's registered there. Because people have just never, the state of some of our neighborhoods is absolutely deplorable, and it's very upsetting. And I was with someone that was like, no, this woman's like, nobody lives there. And I was like, watch. And I went and knocked on the door, and she was the only inhabited house other than the one on the corner. And she was like, I'm not voting. I don't want to vote. I've voted for years and years and years and years. And in this election, I didn't vote in the primary in August. I'm not voting this election, and I am going to discontinue my life as a voter. And I was like, why? I just want to know why. Like, could you please tell me why? I really want to know. And she was like, well, we had all these, her issue was very based on city stuff, and it was very fair. And she was like, we voted all these different city council people, and then we voted in the person that's currently here, and this person still hasn't done anything for me. My block has been burnt out, abandoned homes, squatters, drug addicted people, crimes, sex trafficking, and all this stuff going on. The candidate who is now in office has knocked on my door multiple times and spoken with me and said that they were going to do whatever to get my neighborhood back in full swing, and none of it's ever happened. And I thought that if I had this connection to this person on city council, that I would have an in, and that like I would be some type of a community leader, and I would be cared about and heard, and that I could actually walk on my sidewalk one day.
Wow.
And it really shocked me, and it didn't shock me, but it brought me to tears. It was really, really upsetting, because that's her reality, and that's the reality for so many Detroiters. When you're constantly trying to do something, and then you think someone's gonna finally help you out, just to be able to do what people a few miles away can do in the suburbs, which is walk down the street, not have to deal with violent crime, and like live in your house, have streetlights. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. No stray dogs. Said no stray dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, no stray dogs, exactly. And it's like, she never got it. After thinking she had this relationship with a city council person for 2 or maybe even 3 elections, and I just gave her the information. I encouraged her to vote. I showed her how to vote absentee. I gave her my number. I said, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here to talk about it. If you need like connections to different city services, I'm here to help you. But I also know that like the land bank is super incompetent. I live across from a lot that the land bank owns, and they never mow the lawn, and they won't let me buy it because I don't own the home, and they won't let the people next door buy it because they don't want to list it. So it's like, it's all this bureaucracy and all this red tape and all this stuff you have to get through, and it's frustrating. There's a lot of Detroiters that tell me they're not going to vote. Luckily, sometimes at doors, I got people to like get on their laptop or get on their phone and figure out how to register to vote, or find their voting location, or give them my number, and they were able to call me or whatever. But I'm only one person, and there's a lot of campaigns. I have a bunch of people like me, but there's only so few of us that can like really encourage people to vote. I think the thing that will, all of the Detroiters that don't want to vote,
which is like 80, which is almost like, based off the last election, it's like pushing 80%.
Yeah,
high number.
Yeah, it's all the Detroiters that don't want to vote. Well, it's very sad and disheartening, and I think there are elections that are really important, even at the municipal level. We're voting on the revision of the Detroit City Charter come around this summer. We're voting for a city council primary, or voting for the mayoral primary. There's stuff going, city clerk. There's important positions that are up, but if people don't express their connection to the community and their willingness to fight for the community, then people are going to continue not to vote, because why would I? Yeah. When you feel the same connection to your city council person as you do to Joe Biden, of course you don't care. It's hard. And voter engagement, people try to do everything they can. People do events and free food and this and that and a coupon and raffles and money and whatever. And it's just like, it's great, but it's missing the point that we need to like actually do what we say we're going to do. They need to act, and it's hard. And another thing that people don't understand, because it's by design that people don't understand anything that's going on. If they knew that some things like the Blight Task Force were like kind of operating, but don't have that big of a budget, and there could be a bigger budget if we were to go be loud at city council meetings, maybe more people would vote. But it shouldn't get to that point. It's a lot of it has to do with prioritizing police and our carceral system instead of like people's livelihoods outside of prison. Yeah. If there was a better budget structure, more people would vote. If you could attribute like, oh, the lots are all taken care of in my neighborhood because of my city council person, more people would vote. If you actually showed up at community events and they weren't like, there's a lot of like fake community events that people do where it's just like them and their bros or whatever, or them and whoever. And it's like, no, like if you really were to engage the community and do a real community event, more people would vote. It's really hard. There's a lot of broken and empty promises, and it's hard to express to people that sometimes those promises are broken because of working with other politicians that are corrupt and don't care. So yeah, I think voter engagement in Detroit is going to be a long haul. I don't think it's something that we can fix right away. I think it's something that we're going to have to fix with like generations of community-based progressive politicians.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for walking us through the work that you've done in the city of Detroit around politics, around community engagement, helping us to understand some of the hurdles that folks will face as they work on campaigns, and also some of the cognitive hurdles that voters who've been disenchanted may face as they decide, do I vote in this mayoral city council election? Do I sit out? I will add that folks did come out in somewhat larger numbers. I think it's around like 48%, I think, for the presidential election. So, it shows that people will vote. But, can we get the local election, which arguably you actually have more control over as a Detroiter, with sheer probability? Can we get more Detroiters to come out and state their will and express their opinions at the ballot box this fall? So I want to thank you. Is there anything or any place or social media account that folks should follow or check out for insights?
I'm always really active on Instagram. I always have a lot to say about a lot of different issues, and I'm always there like providing resources and connections to things. So my Instagram is at BIREGA98.
Awesome. I'll put that in the description. We put this out, and so people can follow you and the work that you're doing in District 6 in Detroit and beyond District 6 as well. So thank you for your time, and I hope you get to enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thanks, you too.
Take care.
All right, you as well.